I could say a lot of words, but ultimately, if the people don't believe you, then it doesn't matter at all, right? It's like,
Yeah.
so if trust isn't earned first, then you could be right all day and it not mean anything.
Hello and welcome back to the Manufacturing Culture Podcast. I'm your host, Jim Mayer. If you're new here, this show is really simple. I sit down with people in manufacturing and we talk about what it's like in this industry, what their story has been, what the culture feels like, what people have built and they're proud of, what legacies they want to leave behind, what they've broken, what made them stay. If you've been on this journey before, thanks for coming back. If you're, again, new here, or if you've been here before, please take 2 minutes, go into whatever platform you're listening to this on, and rate and review the show. It helps us more than you can absolutely imagine. Today, I'm talking with Dustin Bowe. Dustin, I had met at a show last fall, and we really hit it off. I mean, and you'll see Dustin on an episode of the Manufacturing Connector here coming up if it hasn't come out already. And he tells the story of how we met. So let's get into Dustin Bowe. Dustin, welcome to the Manufacturing Culture Podcast. How are you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here, man. 2 recordings in like 4 weeks, 6 weeks on my shows. I love having you here. Again, you guys caught my eye at that show last fall, and I don't often do double takes and then walk right up to people, but that was exactly what happened with you and your partner there. Walk us through that moment, just because it's a fun story to tell, and it'll give people a little bit more context on why you and I are talking.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, second round of thanks. I really appreciate you having me. So yeah, I mean, we were at the show in South Carolina, and one of the things that Fletcher and I, my colleague, we care deeply about is culture and like what that means in manufacturing. So we're a software company, and we won't go into too much details there, but at our booth, at our table, we had a banner that made that comment very explicit, right? And so Jim's like walking by, and it was just the most beautiful thing you could ever imagine. Looks at our table, looks up at me and Fletcher, looks back down. It's like, am I reading that right? Is that a software company that cares about culture? And he just like looks back up and just walks up. He's like, all right, what do you do? Why are you here? And it was like this beautiful, oh wait, me and Fletcher, we like looked at each other like, oh, he gets it. Like culture is like the pinnacle point of manufacturing. And when you forget that, then, you've already lost that battle. So yeah, we care about that. And it was very clear that you cared about it too. And so, yeah, and here we are.
Absolutely, man. And from that moment, like it just clicked with you guys. You both are very authentic human beings. You're down to earth and you care about the humans, right? And so having you both on my shows was a very natural ask on my part. So let's get into the icebreaker. I know I did this a little out of order, but that's okay. It's my show. Nobody's going to fire me.
There you go.
Except for maybe a listener or two, but don't leave because I did it out of order. Dustin, if your life were a movie, what genre would it be? Who plays you? And what's the opening scene?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, it would probably be some version of an action thriller, is what I feel from a pacing standpoint. I definitely feel that, and that resonates well with me. Definitely with the last week I've had, to be very transparent. So I feel that, and that resonates well. Who would play me? I would say some unknown actor coming up out of the ranks that no one, has a clue who they are or where they're going to be 5-10 years from now. And that feels pretty good to me, honestly. I like that idea quite a bit. I don't think there needs to be some superstardom, and I think that's fine. And I think opening scene, man, my idea of an opening scene for this thriller, like the things we're gonna kind of unfold, is I see the camera panning over to this like busy street intersection. I see someone like laying down on the crosswalk, like needs help. I see a bunch of people walking past that person, and my prayer is that like the camera pans in on me sprinting over to that person to help them. and to get them the help that they needed. Like that's like what I imagined the opening scene. And then obviously, I could see like, breaking out into some like action thriller where things just go crazy. The person that I'm like helping, I don't know. And, they end up being like this, really, really piece of this puzzle for the, I can kind of like my imagination runs away pretty quickly, as you can tell. But that's what I would pray. I would pray like, hey, even when everyone else is walking by this person who needs some help, that I would be the person that kind of, walks up and says, "Hey, give me your hand. Let's go and try to figure something out." And so that's
I love that.
That's how I would answer that.
I love that. And so let me tell you now why I asked that question, because there's like actual psychology behind that question. I asked that question because your genre is how you see your life as a whole, right? So and it may have recency bias that's brought into the situation, but that's ultimately how you see your life as a whole. Who plays you is based on how you see yourself, not your life, but yourself, your own being, right? And I've had guests say, Matt Damon and John Cena and wild stuff like that. I've also had guests say some unknown, right? And it's not that when that response tells us a lot about who you are as a human being, right? Not that I'm judging anybody this is a judgment free zone, but that's ultimately why I asked that question. And the opening scene is, so all good movies start in media res. They start at the middle part of the story. And that is a very pivotal opening scene for how you flash back and how you flash forward within the writing of the movie. So your media res, your mid part is you helping somebody. Ultimately, that's what I heard. So there's a lot of psychology that comes from that. I'll probably delete this explanation because my audience doesn't necessarily need to hear that. But that's for you why I do that.
Fun. Thanks for this. It's very interesting. It's
Yeah.
very interesting.
So Dustin, another icebreaker, just as fun, but a little bit more serious. What does culture mean to you? So I ask all the guests this, but not all of them believe in culture the way you do. So what is your definition of culture? What does culture mean to you?
Man, it's so deep, and we could. I'm happy we had a good chunk of time to talk about it, right? So that's helpful. Yeah, I think back to this guy. He was our plant manager back in North Carolina when I was an intern. Honestly, intern at Procter and Gamble. He was one of the smartest, most strategic, like individual I've like ever met. Like even to today, right? I've met a lot of really sharp folks, and I mean, this guy just stands out. Just very, very smart, and again, very strategic. And he had this saying that just resonated with me, and I've been repeating it ever since. Like, hey, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And I thought to myself, wait a minute, you're like the most strategic person I know. Like, how is that? And it was just opportunity to kind of go over like the next 4 years in this case and kind of watch that play out, right? You start learning a little bit deeper. It's like, wait a minute, you could have a plan, but if your people aren't engaged, if your people don't believe in what you're doing, if your people don't believe in the mission, then you could have all the strategy in the world and you'll still fail, right? And this is like this depth of understanding of, okay, well, hey, what does it mean to have good culture? What does it mean to have bad culture? Like, who are the culture builders in your organization, your team? Like, what are they actually doing, right? Is it them role modeling the things that are moving the business forward? Is it them helping the people on their team as they need it? I mean, there's a lot of depth there, and there's a lot of things that I've got the opportunity to kind of like learn firsthand, right? Like, hey, how do your leaders, are they leading from the back, or are they out front stacking pallets with you, right? I mean, a lot of like just like really important things that I would say kind of like got crafted or shaped into like my definite culture. So like if I were to like, so that's my broad view, and then if I were to say it like maybe a little bit more succinctly, it would be, well, what are the I think about integrity, right? Like, what are the people on your team doing when no one's watching, right? Like, what are the natural instinctual things that your team and your folks are doing when no one else is around? And I think for me, like, it's like those are some of the pillars of culture that feel the strongest, right? Like, what do you do when no one is watching? What's happening when no one's watching?
Yeah. I get that. Do you think that there's such a thing as good versus bad culture? I mean, or do you think that there is, because ultimately culture exists everywhere, right? It's whether you have the culture you want or you don't. So do you think that there's a situation that a culture you may view as bad or toxic actually is a good culture for somebody else?
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, I could see a world where there are things that are like, um context is important and interpretation is important, right? I can see a world for sure where that's the case, absolutely. But I do think though that there are things that I believe are like, like what, you go back to like that integrity, right? Like, okay, if we're all sitting there, we're all at the table and we kind of hold hands and say, well, these things are not helpful for anybody, including the person, and you have a culture that moves those things forward, then I would say, you have a problematic, you have a culture gap, right? Is what I would describe that as. And it's like, okay, well, now if you're now, but that's different, right? There's nuance, and there's the subtleties, right? So I think there's several different ways to get from point A to point B, and for us to think that, hey, like there's only one path is already a big gap, right? Like, this is where like you get into like diversity is important. You want diversity of thought. You want diversity of people. You want those kinds of things to be baked into what you end up having as culture, because that diversity of thought, that kind of those kinds of things create new ideas and they create innovation. And you want that, right? You want it to be baked into your culture. But again, you want that team to be saying, okay, well, hey, are we moving to point A, or sorry, are we moving to point B, right? And are the things that we're doing, we believe, in the interest of everybody to try to get us there, right? I mean, I'll be honest, I've worked with folks in the past that, were disruptive to be disruptive. And, again, I'm the type of person that says, well, I'm a very, I don't want to say stubborn, but I care enough about the person to dive deep into what's happening, right? Because generally people don't come to work wanting to do a bad job, right? That's the thing. Like, it's like, people don't show up saying, like, I'm just, fed up and I'm going to make everybody's day. Generally, what I've found in my career is something else is going on. And if you took 10 minutes to kind of just understand a little bit more about that person, then you can kind of get a lot further, is what I've found, to be very transparent. Every scenario where I've had someone that's kind of been like, not 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 rowing the boat to point B, it's been some version of some external factor or some misunderstanding along the way. And if you take the time to just dive a little bit deeper with that person, but again, you got to care about people enough to do that, right? Which is a separate thing. So, but yeah, you take that time and you could kind of get there pretty quickly.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I I mean there's so much in your response that we can unpack, and maybe we'll get to it today. There was one moment and I lost it. So, but great answer, man. I love all of that. Rowing from point A to point B, you always want people rowing in the same direction, but sometimes people get tired and so they have to take their oars out of the water. As long as they're still
Mhm.
pointed in the right direction with you, that doesn't mean they're not necessarily completely disengaged, right? It means that they're tired, or to your point, they've got that external factor. I mean, I've been in hundreds, if not thousands, of shops, manufacturers over my career, and I've never met a machinist or a welder or anybody who works at a manufacturing plant want to be second best at whatever they do, right? I've never met a machinist who says, I want to be the number two machinist in the world. Every single one of them I've met thinks that they are the number one machinist in the world, right? There's a lot of pride that comes from that. And when people have that off day, when they're tired, when their oars are out of the water, we have to give them that opportunity to share with us what's going on, and get them back on track.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, absolutely. And the fact that you like, yeah, I love the fact that we were just diving into this metaphor about the oars being in the water. I mean, like that's man, I've had many conversations around exactly this metaphor, and you're describing it perfectly, right? Because and yeah, man, again, my personality is like, okay, well, what? So independent of whatever role I'm in, right? So if I'm rowing or if I'm leading, independent, Like my general question is, okay, well, what am I able to do, right? Like what's in my domain of actions that I can take, right? So I believe formally, like when you have folks that are to the point where they're saying, hey, we're going to put our oars in the water and we're not going to be rowing, it's like, man, I look at leadership very quickly. Like, hey, wait a minute. For you to be at this point where you're not spotting this person getting tired earlier, it's like there's a gap, there's a leadership gap, right? And it's like, okay, because if we are full throttle 100% of the time, if you're at full capacity all the time, you burn out. Even if you have Superman, you burn out, right? And it's like, okay, well, hey, how do you get good at identifying what team dynamics are happening? When people are slowing down, is it just, hey, row faster? That doesn't make sense, right? Right. So like what's the conversations, right? Do you lean in and kind of say, hey man, what's going on? Like, can we understand a little bit more about what you have going? I mean, like, I think there's so much to it, right? But to your point, it's like, well, we are on a boat and we are moving to point B. That's good, yes. So yeah, don't keep your oars in the water. Let's move those up, but let's have the conversation as well, right? Let's dive deep, because ultimately, again, the number of people that show up to work, you said it so perfectly. The number of people that show up to work that don't want to do a good job, similar situation, right? Like, I just haven't met those people. Like they want to do a good job. The question generally is, do I have the tools I need to deliver the results that's expected of me? And I'm in an environment where I feel like the work I'm doing actually adds value. This is actually helping me get to point B. And it's like the clarity of communication around those 2 points generally determines how engaged your people are. And that's been what I was kind of saying, man. It's like hilarious to hear you like take the same metaphor and, and like, yeah, I love it. Yeah, that's right. It's a, yeah.
No, I mean, I have used the canoe, right? The rowboat, whatever you want to say. I've used that in slide decks. I've used that when I've talked about employee engagement, because it's done in a ones and zeros. It's binary. It's, the front is the green and those are your engaged or actively engaged. You've got your middle and that's yellow and that's disengaged. Then you've got the backside and that's red and it's actively disengaged, right? And it shows people in the front with their oars in the water, in the middle in the yellow section with their oars out of the water, in the red they're trying to jump off the back, right? And I think that there's a lot more nuance to that, but I've used that myself, right? Because people do get tired. They do get burnt out. There are external factors. Even though we spend a lot more time at work than we do at home, we still bring those external factors, that home life, into work. And if we've got something going on there, it affects how we operate in our day to day at work. What do you think about, I mean, because you said a lot about leadership and the ability that leadership has to lean into having those discussions with their people who may be having that off day, or to make them row faster, in your words, right? To me, and this happens in every industry, but we see it a lot in manufacturing, where humans are almost discounted. The like human condition, the human body. We ask more of people. People wear multiple hats within organizations, X, X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder, from your perspective, have we lost sight of the humanness of our employees in organizations that lean into the row faster side of it?
Yeah, I mean that's such a good question. I'll break my response into two sections, right? And just kind of give my very raw opinions, right? So I mean,
Good.
I feel like, so like the first part of the response, I feel like we've seen automation do something that humans can't in one regard, right? So you could have a robot in a plant do the same thing over and over and over again, and you can be fooled into thinking that that type of, well, there's two things. One, that hey, that'll just continue to happen whether you take care of that robot or not. First gap. Second gap is that that method, that way of operating is transferable to every resource in your site, right? Every person in your site. And it's like, so you have these two gaps, right? And the irony is, well, at least what I see, the irony is, if you don't take care of your equipment, they break. If you don't take care of your people, they break. And it's like, okay, well, if you're fooled into thinking that, okay, well, hey, you know what, well, this thing could just run, if I just crank the speed up, it'll just go faster, and that's just what happens, right? And it's like, well, if you dive a little bit deeper, people who've like spent some time, it's like, well, yeah, you might be going faster. That doesn't mean you're making the same quality of product, right? That doesn't mean you're operating as the thing was designed to. Faster isn't always better, right? And this is where, again, you take some of those same subtleties and you like try to reapply them to people, and you just like lose a lot very quickly. Hey, just because we're saying go faster or run better, you've never heard those words before, right? Hey, go faster and run better, right? It's like, okay, we could do that, but like at what cost, right? And what's the result? So I feel like there's this disconnect. Yes, I feel like there's a disconnect between expectations when we're asking folks to do things, and I think some of the disconnect has come about because of the fast advancement of technology, which again, we're a software company, right? Like we're cutting edge, bleeding. I mean, it's like we're at the forefront from a technology standpoint. It's like things are changing daily. My words aren't to say that, hey, you never advance, but the how is important, right? Like how you do it and how you go about it is like really, really important. Being able to understand that you can't just take this idea and just like copy and paste it across your people is like really important. And instead, and we've seen this play out in a couple different ways, but what we see typically turn out to be a lot better is, hey, when you take technology and you marry it, or you engage or you build up your people so they then have the tools to kind of take that and use it to expand what they're able to do, well, then you make their work-life balance a little bit better. And then you also take care of the things that you need to do from a expectation standpoint, right? And it's like, but again, there's subtleties, right? You need to be aware enough of your team to know, well, hey, I just moved our site forward 20 years. Have I trained you? Like, have we talked about this? Like, what are your thoughts? Like, were you a part of all the different things that just generally doesn't happen, like when you're kind of going on these projects. Those things are important because people are important. And at the end of the day, you can buy a robot. You can't just like replace your whole team, right? And there's a lot of loss that comes from that. Yeah, I mean, my thought on it is is basically that. I think we've seen technology kind of like skew how leadership kind of treats their folks sometimes, and then things start becoming a number. And then I think when you start detaching, because again, there's no attachment to a robot, right? When you start treating your people like that, again, you lose a lot, right? So yeah, that's
Absolutely.
those. Yeah, I feel that. I feel
love
that
it.
a lot.
I love it. All right, we're 24 minutes into this conversation. We haven't talked about you and your story at all. So we're going to do a little transition here. Dustin, you grew up in the Bahamas, which sounds lovely. I've never been. I need to make it a point to get there. But that's not exactly where a whole lot of manufacturing stories start, at least in my experience. What brought you into the manufacturing field? What got you interested in this as a career?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Yeah, I mean, I've been blessed across my entire life, and we talk for a very long time about that, and I'm not going to do that to anybody. So let me just very briefly say that I came to school in America because I wanted to be a pilot, right? So like I had this like dream as a very young boy to like want to fly planes, and it was this very exciting thing that just to kind of just always resonated with me. But, you know, we, and sorry, so just keep that in your mind, right? So, like, I remember I have this very cool memory being maybe 4 years old, looking at an airport, just being like, just drooling over the idea of like going and flying
Yeah.
a plane, right? Just
Yeah.
like from a very young age. And so I've had that in my mind my entire life. But over the summers growing up, I had an uncle who, he owned a security company, right? Like a home alarm type company. And I would spend the summers working with him. And, in those summers, he would be the kid in the roof crawling through, running cables, just hard work. And in the Bahamas, it's very hot in the summer. It's like go in the winter. But I remember just working hard, to be very transparent. Like it's like just a lot of hard work, right? But loving it because I got to spend time learning things that I just didn't know how to do before. And to be honest, what I didn't realize at the time was I was getting responsibility put on me, right? And I liked it. Anyway, fast forward, came to America, did high school in America, and ended up going to Liberty University. started in the aviation program, started flying, got my private pilot's license, which is fun. And then after that, I was like, you know what? I don't think I want to be a pilot anymore. I don't think this is what I want to do. I'm going to change my degree. Changed my major from aviation to electrical engineering because that's a natural transition, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, that's right. And had a couple fun moments there, which was really good. But I'm a electrical engineer by degree, and but again, I'm a glutton for punishment. So I got connected with a professor, still great friends to this day, but he was in the cybersecurity, the computer science department, and we just hit it off. You would love the guy. He just down to earth, care about his people. But he was in the cybersecurity field part time, and he was like the dean of the cybersecurity program at Liberty. Anyway, we became really good friends. Ended up working together on some other projects on the cybersecurity standpoint. Ended up becoming like the president of Cyber Defense Club. I was the only electrical engineer. Everyone else was like a bunch of computer science majors, which was fun. But that was okay. I got to spend a lot of time with him and doing a lot of fun projects. And then one summer, a friend of mine, who were my lab partner, actually, his dad worked down at the Procter & Gamble site in North Carolina. It's like, hey, a couple of friends are gonna drive down to, do a tour plan. Do you guys you want to come, Dustin? I was like, sure, why not? I don't have anything else going on. Like that sounds great. Like I drove down with them, and it's like the first resume I ever made. I didn't even know I was going to be interviewing anybody. I thought it was going to be just a tour, so I didn't dress. Man, I went there and I met this guy, Kevin. He toured me around down in North Carolina. They make a lot of, Procter & Gamble has 2 sites there, but the one I got to tour, they make a lot of Crest toothpaste and Old Spice deodorant. And we got to tour that, and I was like, never even thought about the idea of there being places. I never even heard of Procter & Gamble prior to me being inside this plant, to be very transparent. I just didn't know about them. And yeah, I got to tour and I was like, oh wow, this is amazing. And then I found myself in a room with a couple other managers, and they were like, so do you think you would be interested in a summer internship? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. Why would I not be? Like, they were like, okay, well, go online and apply. And yeah, so I did all that. Fast forward a couple of years, I had 2 very successful internships at Procter & Gamble and got hired on, and just started my journey there, right? I got drawn to the complexity. I got drawn to at the time we were making like a lot of deodorant every minute. Some very fast, very complicated lines. And they were doing a lot of very impressive, very difficult things. And I realized very quickly, like, oh, the complexity is what makes this hard, right? If you make a stick of deodorant one every minute, then that's nothing. It's like, okay, but like when you're doing hundreds a minute, then things get very complicated very quickly. And I got drawn into that complexity, and it was fun. And so I did that for a couple of years, and I think that's where I got bitten by that manufacturing bug. And so I got a chance to work with the electrical engineers. I got a chance to work with the machine shops. Got a chance to work with production, quality, safety. And then when I hired on, I got the opportunity to have a lot of responsibility handed to me very quickly, which is where I started learning about people, right? And so I was a very young process engineer, and I was, co-managing people older than my grandfather. And I was like, I would find myself in these rooms. It was like, man, okay, hey, I just had a rough night, and I'm like having these conversations that I was like, again, I had a partner alongside me, but you get to learn a lot very quickly. They give you a lot of responsibility very quickly. I just loved it. It drew me in.
Because after P&G, you walked into a couple of different other management roles, right? What was one of the hardest thing that you had to learn as a leader versus being an individual contributor?
Oh man, that's such a good question. Okay, so I had this role. I was a plant manager, and I needed to train up the person to take my role so I could go on another project, right? And it was this it was this moment where, and me and that person, we didn't hit it off right away. Let me just say those words,
Okay.
right? Again, like, why was I in this role and why not them? Why am I training them? Some of those kind of subtleties, right? And fair questions. But, again, here we are, and we're going to try to, make as much as we can out of what we have, right? There's this one moment where I realized that I could communicate something that I believe to be true, right? And I could be 95, 98% certain that that's the case. And it could be a good teaching moment for me or someone on my team. But it's so different for someone to hear the words that you're saying and that be in their mind versus them watching that play out and experiencing it for themselves and them now having that lesson to kind of take and transfer to somebody else, right? So this particular case was, I had this individual, this guy that I was training, and the situation was playing out with one of the people that reported to him. And what I was basically saying to him was, hey, here's what I think is going to happen. This person on your team is going to come with this problem. And when they present you this problem, the gap isn't that they don't necessarily want to do the work. There's a misunderstanding on what they think the problem itself is. And he was like, nope, that can't be right. And and I was like, all right, fair. And I kid you not, it couldn't have been any more perfect. The person that we were talking about walks up, right? They walk up and they say exactly that same thing. And I start laughing because I'm like, and it wasn't even about being right, but it was like, hey man, we just spent half an hour going back and forth on this point,
Yeah.
right? And so it was like this moment where I was realizing in real time, it's like, oh, wait a minute, I could say a lot of words, but ultimately, if the people don't believe you, then it doesn't matter at all, right? It's like, so if trust isn't earned first, then you could be right all day and it not mean anything.
Yep.
Right.
100%.
And it was this very deep, oh, wait a minute. Now, again, me and this guy, we ended up being really good friends afterwards. Right. It was like, wait a minute. Why did you think that? It was a really good moment. Right. But I realized, oh, wait a minute. You don't even have a reason to trust me.
Right.
Right. Why would you take anything I'm saying? There's no reason for you to trust. I mean, here's my background, here's my portfolio, sure, but fine, but that doesn't mean anything to you. You don't have any reason. You've never seen me make something. You haven't seen me, you know what I mean? So I realized how important trust itself is with your team, with the people that you work alongside. And man, it was a funny moment, but it was also one of these things that was all right, there's a trust gap. You don't trust me, right? And it's inappropriate, might not be the right word, maybe foolish or youthful to think that you should have trusted me just because of my title, right? Just doesn't work that way, right? And it was that was probably one of the more fun versions of that. It was a funny situation. He was laughing, I was laughing. The person who came up was laughing. It was a funny situation. It was but it was a much deeper moment. Oh wait, your people, if they don't trust you, then
so how did that moment change the level of trust that existed between you and that person?
Yeah. So what happened there? What happened next? He went off with his supervisor that was talking to him, that had walked up to us. They had that conversation. And then he came back to me a little bit later and was like, okay, I need to know why you thought that was going to play out in this way, right? And then what I realized was, again, we just hadn't had any actual conversations to explain why I would say the things that I would say, right? It was a lot more okay, hey, here's what needs to go and happen, right? But he was not clear on the why in general, right? And I didn't understand his perspective either. So it was so he came back and we just got real. So we just started talking. He told me about how he felt, and I shared how I felt, and we talked about career progression, all kinds of fun things. But I realized okay, well, wait a minute, you don't know me, right? And I don't know you, right? We haven't gone to know each other, right? We haven't, and I don't think you have to be, most people will tell you, I don't think you have to be friends with everybody on your team, right? That wasn't the point of what I'm saying right now. But I do think this is important. And I think this is missed a lot by leaders. you need to know your people, right? You need to know your people, and your people need to be able to trust you, right? Because if that doesn't exist, then I mean, you could be right all day, but if you don't know your people to know whether or not they actually trust you or not, I mean, like there's just, I mean, you have gaps all around, and so for me in this moment, it was great because the way it played out, he felt comfortable enough, and again, it was a funny situation, so it was like, now how in the world did you know that was going to happen? And I was like, funny that you asked, because that's happened to me 17 times before.
Right.
Not magic. Like
Right.
this has happened to me a lot, right?
Yeah.
And so now I just know when that's happening, right? So you don't have to. This doesn't have to happen to you 17 times. We could just talk about it so you can be aware of it, right? And it was like this just very real. Like, hey man, like here, listen to these failures I've had because I have a lot, right? And you don't need to repeat those, right? Like I got a lot of losses.
Yes.
Don't repeat these losses. Like let's just talk through it, right? And if we could just learn from having that conversation together, and I think it's like, again, like, sometimes people will present you as like, again, like if you're being brought in and you're being hired for a role, the whole intent is like, okay, well, hey, are you gonna go and grab your cape and like save this? And it's like, man, I am not. Like that is not the picture. Like no heroes would be like a motto that I would like. We don't want any heroes running around. Like,
yes.
Hey, no, Superman, you hang your cape up. Nope. We want one team, one dream, baby. Like, let's not do this whole Superman business. So when people think there's like you have this culture of like, all right, well, who's Superman? Who's gonna go and save the day? It's like, man, it's everyone that comes into that. Then it's like, okay, well, hey, are you trying to dethrone me as Superman, or do you just think you're Superman yourself? And it's like this, so it's important to kind of just know your people. Like, hey, how do you feel about me coming alongside and helping?
Yeah, that makes sense.
What does that mean to you, right? And just deeper in that way. So yeah, those are my thoughts.
Well, so I mean, again, you've worked at a lot of plants. You've been in leadership roles. You've seen a lot of people come into the industry or come into your facilities. What impact does being part of this industry have on somebody who is just joining?
Yeah. So again, culture is so important to me, Jim. It's hard to. One of the most remarkable. I've had several really good hires. I'll be very transparent. I've had like several really good hires, but one that sticks out in this moment was this like 5'6", maybe 5'2". Very. I mean, she was mom of two kids, and she was like, nope, we need a job. I need a job. And she was like the only girl on our team. And man, Jim, she worked harder than you want to talk about. She was like, go teach me what I need to know. Right. She would be doing maintenance covered in grease with all the other guys. I mean, she was like, all right, yep, hand me that 12. Let's go and tear this label apart. I mean, just this amazing spirited worker, right? Now, here's what's fun. You see someone like that come in, right? And again, this was good because, I was early in my career in this particular scenario, right? And it just immediately shatters if you had any preconceived notions of anything, they just go away immediately, right? And that's really important, right? So those are important lessons to learn. I think it's important to learn like, hey, bias needs to be checked often. It needs to be checked very often, man. But so in this particular scenario, she comes in and I watched the team that she joined bring her in and just love on her in this like way that you couldn't even imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, just like, and it was this beautiful thing. They were like, all right, well, let me make sure your payment plan is this. Okay, good. This is what you need to watch out for. I mean, it's just daily, like, and I watched this symbiotic relation, like where the team was like, all right, nope, you're on the team now. We're going to take care of you. You're going to take care of us. We're going to work together and we're going to like move the ball forward. And it was just like beautiful. I mean, just beautiful because again, she came into this place where the culture was strong. That's not saying that there weren't personalities on the team. We have personalities on the team for sure. Absolutely. But it was this beautiful situation where, I mean, she came in, team absorbed, and Johnny Smith, that's the only name I'll call on this podcast. And it's because his name is Johnny Smith, which is, but he was, again, old enough to be my granddaddy, right? When I first hired on Johnny Smith, I mean, I learned so many valuable lessons, right? But he was that team lead, and she came in onto his team, and it was this. I mean, he was like, again, like hey, we are a team. Everybody, she's on our team now, and we're gonna make sure she has what she needs to be successful. And you kind of watch that play out, and it's like, man, you see a team that supports each other, and like when someone's kids aren't doing good and they're like, hey, you go work on that, okay, we got this. And I mean, it's just all kinds of this dynamic of like, okay, well, hey, I do have a team that cares about me here, so when things start going a little crazy at home, all right, I know I'm taken care of here, I can go take care of my home. And then you end up with this like this beautiful situation, man. I've seen that play out a couple of times, and that was like one that really. But I mean, you watch the reward that comes along with that, right? This team that was just like growing and doing well, and you look at them, they're like they're learning things, right? I mean, so now, I mean, she could go tear apart a 1500 Silverado if she wanted to, right? Because now she's like mechanically inclined, yes. And she's like very sharp. But you kind of watch that, you watch someone grow, you watch them get pushed, and you watch them like go beyond wherever they thought they were. And just having a team that would be able to do that is this rewarding thing. It really gets me fired up. It makes me yeah, the idea of us pushing beyond wherever we think we are currently makes me very excited.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And this is a supernatural transition into my next question. You walked away from stability, right? As a plant manager to start a company, a software company, literally from scratch. Why? What about what you were building was like, man, this is it. This is what I'm called to do.
Yeah, great question. One, the first, what I was thinking when you were answering that question was because I'm a crazy person. That's what I'm learning. I got some colleagues in now, and like I talk to the people that like start things from scratch, and you can resonate here. Well, it's like because I'm a crazy person. That's the reason. You got a little bit of crazy. But if I take a moment and pause, right? So I'm a very faith based person, right? So like you hear that calling, it's extremely important to me. Right? I felt okay taking on a little bit extra risk because I felt like my career had been this journey, very unique, right? Where you have someone doubly cybersecurity background, a little bit of computer science background, go into manufacturing where you're leading people and working closely on equipment, and then that change into like a digital innovation leader at that company where you get to travel and see many different sites, many different technologies. And then that transition to working on larger projects like SAP. And so, I mean, it's like this interesting journey. I saw that journey play out. And after a couple different moments in that journey, saw how the tools that my teams were using were painful. They're painful for me. And I was like, okay, if this is hard on me to use, then has to be hard on my team. There's no way that it's not, right? And so I felt that deeply, and I felt this idea of like, okay, well, surely there's a way that this could be better, right? This feels like this could be better. And so, you just look, you just go out there and you start looking.
Yeah.
All right, well, what systems are out there that kind of like would meet the needs that I kind of see as having the things that are just been repeated over the course of my career, and didn't see any. So I said to myself, all right, well, I'm going to go and make it, right? Because ultimately, I believe that if done well, if you can give the people the tools that they need to be successful, then those people grow, and you have that rewarding experience that we just talked about. Like that happens to more people. It happens to not just the exception, but that's like your baseline now, which is my desire. And then for the organization itself, they get the reward as well because, hey, now we're walking towards point B. And again, generally, people want to come to work, and this has been my experience. People want to show up as best as they can. They want to show up at 100, right? So for me, I kind of made the comment earlier, like, well, what are the things that I can control? And what I realized, a very important part of that is well, what tools are we giving the people to use on that journey? Are we equipping them for the job that's at hand? And for me, it's like, okay, yeah, you have an axe, but man, what would be really great is if you keep your axe. I don't want to take it away, but man, let me give you a chainsaw as well, right? And let me show you how to use it. I feel like those two things together would be great, right? Like, yep, don't throw away the axe. Don't hear me say that, right? But here's a chainsaw as well.
Yeah.
And let's make sure you guys know how to use it. And man, when you see you go from cutting down maybe one tree a day to, all right, now, well, maybe it's a terrible example because I'm not saying we should go out and cut down trees, but
I know what you meant. I meant what you knew.
yeah, that's right. That's right. There you go. But, you know, you can go from like, hey, one a day to 10, 20 a day, just because same person, but the tools are different, right? And there's expertise in the tools and how to use the tools differently to achieve what they're trying to do. Man, it's just rewarding because that person feels rewarded. And then as that person feels rewarded, their team feels rewarded. And as those teams feel rewarded, then the organization itself starts moving in the right direction. So yeah, I very, very fired up on yeah, I don't know. I like solving hard problems, and I like people being the center point of solving those hard problems, the solutions.
And so share with us, without going into a ton of detail, because there's a whole nother episode about the software itself, but share with us what the software aims to do. What is the problem you're trying to solve?
Yeah, this is good. So what I've felt for a good chunk of my career was, hey, you need to run better, faster, stronger, right? Like, hey, I need more units, same amount of time, right? And the folly is to take that message to your team and say the same thing, right? This is the same. This is the comments from earlier. When you take that message to your team and say, "All right, Johnny, I need you to run twice as fast," it's not actionable because you're asking them to make a change on an output measure, right? So what we've felt and what we've developed is this path to say, what are my input measures, right? So here's my system. What are the things that your team can actually control? And instead of asking them to say, hey, you need to produce at X, we ask a slightly different question. We ask, well, what are the input measures for your system? What are the things that actually control how much you produce, right? And we give them those dials and we give them tools catered towards the input measures. A lot of people will say, okay, well, hey, we're producing at this rate, our OE is this, and those are all lagging indicators. They're all output measures. For us, what we care a lot more, we can track all those things as well, but what we care way more about is the things that the person, when they go out on the shop floor, what can they control, right? And for that person, like that person can control, well, hey, am I taking care of the equipment, right? Am I taking care of it the same way that Johnny would take care of it, right? What are my settings? What am I setting it up to? How am I going about that? What are the standards that we have in place? It's all these input measures. It's upstream. Again, it's harder because you would need a system in place. You would need to actually have an idea of like what those input measures are. But that's the intent of our application, right? Our application is saying, hey, what are the input measures? Because these are the things that your people can actually control. I can't just magic the running twice as fast. I can't just, magic 10% OEE, but I can control my input measures. And those things are correlated to, so it's the good old adage of like, hey, no, we're going to play every play to its full intent, right? And we'll look at the scoreboard at the end.
Yep.
And that is the exact same thing. So for us, we look upstream and we ask, hey, what are the input measures for my system? And then we say, hey, do your people have the tools to make those input measure changes? Are they equipped? Do they know what these things mean? What is a center line? What is a changeover task list? Like, what are those things? And do they know what those things are and where to find them? So that's what we seek to address. And again, when you get folks that are making changes to these input measures and then seeing their results increase, it's like, oh, wait a minute. It's not like I'm doing better, but I have no idea why. It's now I know what I'm doing here and I can see how it controls what my outputs are. Perfect. Let's cook.
Got it. What's the number one thing you're proud of about being part of this industry?
That's a good question. Let me think about that for a second. This is probably gonna be the longest pause you'll get out of me. I really love the idea of us people making things, which seems very simple, but okay, yeah, I really love that idea. I love the idea of us looking at something and saying, hey, this could be better, right? How can we make this better? And for me, this idea of manufacturing, because again, manufacturing, you're making things, right? You have different versions of that. Some people make one really amazing thing a day, and that's like, yeah, this is a 7 axes a CNC machine that like those very out there, very complicated, but it's like, all right, this is this beautiful thing, and we made this, and it's going to help do X, and it's like because we're going to make this thing better. Makes me very excited. And then you have the like high volume. It's like, wait, okay, you know what? Because we can, you know, ship water, right? I mean, just like basic things we don't think about, right?
Yeah.
Because we can like put toothpaste in a tube at scale. Like toothpaste isn't now 10 times as expensive. You know what I mean? Like just like, hey, how can we make things better? And I love when you have folks that say that out loud and then they dive into it and say, okay, well, you know what? How could we make this better? And then you get the birth of innovation, right? And then you just see that manifest itself in like all these different ways. I'm probably more drawn to that. That probably makes me, yeah, I probably feel the most pride in the manufacturing industry when I see innovation happening and people just like asking that question, like, well, how can we make this better? It makes me so happy.
I love it. What legacy do you want to leave on this industry? What do you want? What mark is your career going to leave behind?
Yeah, another good question. Yeah, I would say probably twofold. And this will be maybe deep and not deep, I don't know, but twofold, right? So again, like I'm a faith-based person, right? So like I would love for people to take a look at my legacy. It's like, oh yeah, that man was working for the glory of God, and that would bring such joy to my heart. I would be like, if I could do that, then hot dog, let's do it. But then I think the thing that's left behind would be that people aren't thrown away, right? That as we continue to advance with technology, that we're just not forgetting about our people, right? Like, I think there's this risk, and you see it even more now with like AI. And again, we use AI all the time. It's an amazing tool, but again, to that same point, it's a tool, right? It's a tool. Like my car is a tool. Like my toolbox is a tool. Like it's a tool. So for me, it's I it's important to me that people aren't left behind, right? Because again, that's where, in my opinion, the innovation happens, right? And I think the more you can equip your people to have these innovative ideas and to like just give them the tools they need to kind of march forward and like to kind of think outside the box and all those different things, I think the better we are as a whole, because then you'll have more people in society that are saying things like, well, how can I make that better? Right? How can I push the envelope on this? Right? And I think there's like this risk of that being lost. I think if we could do our jobs well, that people will look at their teams as their most valuable resources. And it's not in the technical, but it's really, hey, our people are our most valuable resources. And how do we ensure that we take care of our people?
Awesome. Love that answer, man. We're up on time here. So, Dustin, what didn't I ask you that you want to share with the audience?
You asked me a lot. You asked me way more than I thought you were going to ask me, to be very transparent. So I don't know. I'm drawing a blank on that.
All right.
But
fair enough.
yeah,
That means I did my job, man.
I think you did your job exceptionally well, and it's very clear that you've done this many times. And yeah, it's not your first rodeo, so that's fun, and I appreciate it because you took good care of me. So thanks.
Awesome. Well, I loved your vulnerability. I loved your openness. I love your leadership, your thoughts, what you believe in, what makes you proud, what marks you want to leave on the industry, on the world itself. Dustin, you're a good dude, and I really appreciate you being part of today's episode. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, Jim. I really appreciate it. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and thanks for having me.
You too. And ladies and gentlemen, that was Dustin Bowe. If that conversation resonated with you like it did with me, that's going to be one that I replay in my head over and over throughout the rest of the day. Share this episode if you liked it. Share it with somebody who may not be in manufacturing, may not know what they want to do in the next stage of their career or the next stage of life. Leave a rating, write a review. It helps more people find the show. It rockets us up the charts every time you do that. Thanks for being on this journey with me. We'll see you next time. Keep making things.